welcome to another episode of Exploring Standards. As always, I am your host, Jess, and today I am joined on the show by Kathy from Asset Risk Management. Kathy, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Jess. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm very good. For those who are new to listen to the podcast, Kathy has been on several times, and she works for Asset Risk Management and specializes in 14,001 and 9,001. And she's also been working on a fantastic new scheme that we've launched, and it's called Idea. And yeah, Kathy has been on the podcast, as said, quite a few times. Talking mainly about 14,001. So if you haven't listened to the episodes, you can go back and have a listen. So today is a big episode because, as everyone knows in this industry, the 14,001 standard update was released recently. And we've been working really hard behind the scenes to get you guys this update on the new standard. What we will say before we get into anything in this episode is, yes, there's a lot of noise about this standard right now, but this episode isn't to panic you. It's to say, actually, don't panic. There's not a lot to panic about. We're going to talk through sort of the key changes and what you can expect. But ultimately, don't panic. That's, I think, the biggest message that we want to say is there is a transition period. We'll talk about that in a bit. There are some changes, but it makes sense because obviously the old standard was 2015. So something needed to come. We knew it was coming. So please don't panic. um, Right. So, first of all, let's just quickly get into what is ISO 14001 and why is it important, Kathy?
So ISO 14001 is the internationally recognized standard for environmental management. What it is basically is a structured framework of, I see them more as tasks really and processes. The documentation is there to support it, but the whole point of it is to make your environmental management proactive rather
Mhm.
than reactive. So what
Yeah.
we don't want to be seeing is something happens and then a company has to try and repair any kind of environmental incident, or a law changes and suddenly there are regulations they have to meet they didn't expect to before. Having this system means that you're already prepared, you're already aware of the things that could come up environmentally, and it helps you just make better, more efficient decisions for the company as well as for the environment.
I love it. That's such a succinct sort of overview of what 14,001 is. Now, obviously, environmental management has become a key focus for organizations today. And why do you think that is?
So, I mean, obviously, there's been, like you say, some noise for a while.
Mhm.
I actually happened to see the other day, there was a discussion about this on the TV, and they were talking about our current King Charles when he was Prince, way back in the sort of 80s, was talking about, we need to be thinking about environmental issues. And of course, at the time, it was, this is not a topic. This is not a topic we discuss. Now people are starting to realize it's really a topic we discuss
Mhm.
because there are very real world consequences happening for the things that affect the environment. So there are knock-ons for the businesses. If you think about things like the cost of fossil fuels
Mhm.
currently is pushing the prices up for all the companies, which is being passed on to the customers, which is affecting the custom that the businesses get. But that's because we're reliant on the fossil fuels and the way it's done.
Yes.
So if we did things slightly differently, this wouldn't be such an issue right now. So it has a real world application. And then you've got things like the COP, Conference of Parties. They've just had number 29, I think, last year. G10 20, the group of 20 countries, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. These are all being discussed. These are big events with lots of countries and lots of very so leader focused discussions happening on how we can all group together to
Mhm.
so that it's not on one person or one place to try and fix what's happening. So they're bringing in recommendations, and that in turn is being enshrined in law by the countries that are saying, oh, actually, it would be a good idea if we got a grip on this. And that
Yeah.
in turn affects the businesses. So that's why today especially at the moment, it's a particularly lively topic.
I think that goes nicely to sort of like my next question then, because we're talking about this new update. So what prompted this update for 14,001?
Well, as you said earlier, Um, 2015 was an entirely different world. Quite literally, everything has changed since 2015. And it's meant that then what we had wasn't out of date. The 2015 standard wasn't out of date.
Hmm.
It just wasn't quite the right focus anymore, and it didn't have quite the right. Um, it didn't kind of go far enough. I think
Hmm.
is what happened there. So as they do, ISO their schedule says they'll start reviewing them after 5 years, but it's a very long process, which is why it usually takes about 10. So they
Yeah.
actually started reviewing this in 2020, in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and seeing how that changed the
Yeah.
world and the environment, how they saw, well, people are traveling less, and all our different environmental impact factors that we're registering, those have drastically changed. Perhaps there's a new way developing in the world. And so what they started to look at was, instead of going from, oh yeah, we're working on it, don't worry, we're working on it, to, okay, no, no, this is something we should look at right this minute, while we have the opportunity, while we have the chance.
Mhm. Yeah.
So the discussion of resource availability and the climate change amendments that have come in, all the laws that have come in, and ISO are getting that in place to help businesses strengthen and clarify their existing systems and ways of thinking, and perhaps introduce some new ways of thinking to people, to say, look, this is not a big thing. This is something that would just run along in your general business activities. You
Yeah.
know, if you want to compare it like 9001, what's your biggest cost? Is it staff travel? Well, okay, that's also your biggest environmental impact. So you're already considering the cost. Why don't you consider the environmental impact at the same time?
Yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
this standard is for. It's saying, here we go, you're already doing stuff anyway. Let's just keep going. And that's the whole purpose of it.
I love that when you said the 2015 standard wasn't out of date, but now the focus is changing, and that's something that's really important to remember. So let's start looking at the key changes. Then, obviously, there are some changes with the update. Naturally, what are the key changes in the new version?
Okay, so the first thing I want to say, I spent all day yesterday studying this to make sure I'd got it correct. Actually, I was surprised. There are really not that bigger changes as I was expecting, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I was expecting a bit like when the 2015 standard came out, it was a big change. It was a
Mhm.
huge move from the version we had before. This is not so much. Actually, what this is they've listened to what the people who are implementing it are saying. So that's
Mhm.
not just the clients that are putting it in their businesses, it's us as well, consultants and auditors. And they've
Yeah.
listened to the things where we've said, hmm, I feel like that has the wrong angle, or I feel like that needs some more clarity, or why don't you move that clause because it actually relates to this one 2 clauses before, and yet you've kept them separate. And that's what
Okay.
they've done. So the first thing that they've um, updated is, in clause 4, you're asked to consider the context of your organisation as a whole. So
Mhm.
it's essentially, if your business was the main character in the movie, what would you need to know about it? Well, now they've asked you to focus more on its environmental factors as well as your business
Okay.
context. They're asking you to look at life cycle as a whole. So they're going from point of the idea being conceived through to that item, that service, it's over, it's done, it needs to be, disposed of. How does that happen? So
Yeah.
it now asks you to take into account your suppliers, who they are, what they do, the resources they use. You're not responsible for that, but you are responsible for choosing the best supplier you can. And
Yeah.
let's face it, if it's to do with cost, you choose the best cost, don't you? So they're asking you to also look at those elements of best choices for your company.
Mhm.
The next major change, really, is that now risks and opportunity has become its own entity. So previously, in the 2015 standard, risks and opportunities was sort of slotted in as a subclause in a way. It was under a term general in clause 6, I think, planning. Now it has its own clause, own section with a lot more description, and gives you a lot more information about why you're doing these risks and opportunities. And that means they can clarify it's not just business risk, it's not just environmental risk. We're looking at the knock-on effect between the two. So it
Hmm.
now attaches to aspects and impacts, which is something that was already sort of required by the standard. It was required that you assessed them. What it
Hmm.
didn't require before is that you had a set criteria.
Okay.
So now for both risks and opportunities and aspects and impacts, you have to evidence you've considered all these things to a very set criteria. You're not just picking things out of the air. You're saying, okay, I want to look at this and this and this and score them, and this is my result, and therefore I can prioritize.
Okay.
And then the last thing they've really added is the planning of changes. So anyone who has 9001 will know this clause very well. It's something that you think as a business, oh, well, something happens, we sorted it out. Yeah, if something happens, if I'm not here, this person takes over, no problem. But in 9001, you're asked to actually document and evidence that. And that's what they've also asked you to do in 14,001 now, is
Okay.
that when changes happen of any kind, whether that's internally, staff changes, changes to how you do things, but also changes outside of the company that affects what you do and who you are as a company. You need to plan to manage that effectively because it can have a really detrimental effect on the environment if you suddenly have to make an immediate rash decision with no thinking because something has happened and you're reacting. So again,
Hmm.
we're doing proactive, not reactive. And
Yes.
so that's a whole new clause been brought in, but it's plain common sense. Everyone plans for what happens if the building burns down. You're just taking it a little bit further with the environmental elements. So, and
Okay.
that's basically it. It's not a huge change at all, as I said.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a relief for our listeners to hear that
Yeah.
there are actually changes. Saying that, which of these changes will have the biggest impact on organizations?
I think overall, the broader view of it,
Yeah.
the life cycle perspective. As a business, you create a thing that people will want, and you sell that thing, and then it's their thing. And all you really think about is that bit of you, the sort of almost what happens within your building.
Hmm.
That is the bit that has changed the most. Is that now it's not just, you know, are you a paperless office? Can you reduce your water use? Can you reduce your electricity use? They're now asking you to consider from start to finish. Where are you purchasing your wood from? Is that person responsible? If not, can you realistically choose someone better, perhaps?
Hmm.
And then onwards, if you're selling a product to a client, giving them instructions that says, okay, when this product is done, you know, you can recycle it here. You can bring it back to us and we'll refurbish it or whatever else. So that's probably it's broadening that thinking, the sort of scope, the boundary of what you've got to look at. Um, and that sort of plays into the change management as well. So I think those two together are the biggest things for people to think about here.
Okay, that's interesting. So you obviously earlier you were talking about kind of what instigated the changes. So how do these updates reflect current global sustainability challenges?
Obviously, reality is interesting at the moment, and I think that's really playing out across a lot of parts of our lives.
Hmm.
Being part of a company, you're now being asked to, don't want to say stand up,
Yeah.
but to actually make your ability to have a good impact more obvious and more committed. as I said, we've got the COP meetings, the G20s, these things going on. That's moved environmental awareness from an abstract concept to this actually has a real world impact on my business.
Yeah.
We've got the Climate Change Act, we've got ESOS came in, and a lot of companies did that. The Environment Act was updated in 2021. These are all things that companies have to be aware of. So around the compliance areas, there's a lot that people have to think about.
Mhm.
But I think it really reflects how we don't. They say work-life balance, right? We have our domestic lives and our work lives,
Yeah.
but these two, they have to work side by side. If the companies aren't doing what they need to do, it has a knock-on effect on our, domestic lives, our life outside of work. And I think people are really starting to see that connection now, that need to measure the performance all round and all
Yeah.
work together to bring better for everyone. Let's be honest, it's going to be better for everyone if we can get towards. How about wind farms? We've had so much windy weather this last year. I've never known anything like it. Please tell me the wind farms have been getting some good generation there. That kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I love it. Okay. So big question then. Obviously, people who are already certified to 14,001, what do they need to do next?
Don't panic. That's the first thing. Um,
That's
like we said earlier, this is not like the 2015 standard was. That was a huge shift. This is a gentle amendment, a gentle update. And the first thing to do, realistically, is to get yourself a comparison, a gap analysis between what you're already doing and what you'll need to do when this new standard comes in. So the first thing I'll highlight is that you should have around 3 years. That is the usual time they have identified, the ISO, that they're giving people 3 years to transition a full certification cycle. So if you're
yeah.
just about to sit down to your stage two for the 2015 standard, don't panic. That's okay, because when it comes around to recertification, you'll recertify to the 2026 standard.
Yeah. Okay.
To get yourself there, grab yourself a gap analysis, compare what you're doing to what you need to do, and then from that point on, it's those minor updates, it's the risk assessments, it's one-off things that are not big pieces of work, and then it will just sit comfortably in your system, and your cert body will pick it up when it's time, and just don't worry, don't stress about it too much. Do it properly rather than reactively.
Yeah, I love that. Don't react. And also, I think it's also important to note is that obviously the standard's only just dropped. So the certification bodies and their auditors actually also need to be trained as well. So,
Yes. Yeah, everybody needs training now.
everyone is training now. So, they have to get through that first before anyone can certify you anyway. So
Yeah.
there is sort of a pause on that. So that's something else for people to remember as well in terms of the transition. How challenging will the new transition be?
It really shouldn't be that big of an impact. If
Okay.
you've already got a system that is comfortably chugging along, then it's just updating it. It's kind of like when you get a new operations director and they say, "Oh, actually, I thought maybe we could uh, change this step slightly to make that bit quicker," and you
Mhm.
go, "Okay, we'll give that a go."
Yeah.
That's all it should be. I think really the main challenge will be the shift of mindset from, as I keep saying, reactive to proactive. And from that idea of, well, we don't manufacture, we're a services company, a bit like us, we're consultants.
Mhm.
Um, so therefore, we don't really have any environmental impacts. Actually, we do. Everything we do has an impact. My laptop is on charge right now. That is using electricity. That's okay, a small impact and one that can't be avoided. But it's changing that mindset, I think, is going to probably be the biggest challenge towards, oh, okay, yeah, this is just part of how we operate now.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, let's think now about organizations who are maybe listening to this or somebody who's listening to this and they're not currently certified to 14,001. What are some of the common mistakes organizations make when they implement this standard?
So the first thing is, as I said, that mindset. Um, people have this habit when we're shown images of environmental impacts, we're shown factories belting out smoke, we're
Mhm,
shown motorways at standstill, and so that gives you the wrong point of view. It's that idea of I'm doing this standard because I want to make sure that everything we can do, we're doing.
mhm,
And so I think as long as you see it as this is a proactive, this is a positive thing that I'm doing. It's not just a documentation exercise. I'm not just doing it because this client has asked for it. I'm not just doing it because I'm worried about compliance issues. I'm doing it because genuinely this is something I think will move my company onto the next step.
yeah,
And so, really, if the frequent issues that people have, they focus on, oh, well, in this procedure, we don't use any resources, so therefore we don't have to consider the environmental aspect. Well, actually, there's still environmental risks in every process.
yeah,
It's things like getting leaders to, from the very beginning, say, okay, this is what we're doing now, and I'm here to make sure it all goes smoothly, and here's how we're going to do it. Here's the plan. Anybody's like worried or anything, come and speak to me, and to really consider from top down, bottom up,
mhm,
and side to side from the start to the end of the process. And those are really the main things people need to focus on. You've got to see it as an entire thing, not
mhm,
just this is a nice accessory I'd like to wear, sort of thing, if that makes sense.
yeah. Well, I've got the tick. That's it. We're done. Yeah, no, it's a whole
Yeah.
process. Okay, so finally then, what's one key takeaway listeners should remember from this update?
The one key thing would be it's about intention here.
Okay.
It's also about impact, but the new standard is very much about your intention to improve every aspect of your company that you can. It's
Yeah.
not about, as we said, that, oh, I have it, therefore that's what I need to do. The risks that you're seeing, the things that you're seeing out in the world happening, they are all connected to environmental management. As I said, the oil thing at the moment, the fuel thing at the moment, the costs are
Mhm.
rocketing. That's having an impact on you buying things for your company and then on what you have to charge your clients. So if you work in a way that takes you away from, okay, could I perhaps find a supplier that uses green energy for their
Yeah.
vans? Less of an impact on the environment, less of an impact on you. These are real world applications. So we need to be able to start walking the machine in the positive direction.
Yeah.
And it all starts even the littlest things because the more that you can do, the more bits we can take away that are causing problems, the
Mhm.
nicer it gets for everyone all round.
Okay. Okay, I love that. Thank you. Thank you very much, Kathy, for joining me on the show. Obviously, we've been talking about the 14,001 update. Our big message from Ascent is don't panic. You have plenty of time to transition over. We will be running an early adopter scheme. So perhaps if you're not currently um, certified to 14,001 and you're considering it now and you think, oh, well, now the new standard's out, it's a good time to do it because it's the updated version. We're running an early adopter scheme, which is discounted rates. Equally, if you're someone who's eager to transition over to the new version and you are currently certified, please reach out because once again, the early adopter scheme. If you want any more information, I will pop a link so you can contact us and we can have an initial call about that. Uh, Thank you very much, Kathy. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for all the hard work I know you've done since the standard just dropped to make this episode happen. I'm sure you dreamt
24
that
hours ago.
poor Kathy got a message
By
from me like,
surprise.
when are you free? So appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you for
Thanks,
those
Jeff.
people for listening. If you have enjoyed the episode, please make sure you rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help us. And we'll be back with an episode in a couple of weeks.